There are two things I want to comment on in chapter 1 of John's Gospel before I move on. The first is found in verse 43, where it says, "The day following, Jesus would go forth into Galilee, and findeth Philip, and saith unto him, Follow me." Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea as King of the Jews. He was baptized in Judea. Now, after returning from the wilderness temptation, he does not begin his ministry in Judea. He finds Galileans for disciples and goes into Galilee. Why is that? Do we know the answer? Well, there are some things I know, and I will go over that with you. The first reason for this was to fulfill prophecy. Remember that in Matthew chapter 2, verses 12 through 15, Joseph was warned by God in a dream to take Jesus and his mother into Egypt under the cover of darkness. He was to stay there until Herod was dead, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt have I called my son. This prophetic citation was from Hosea chapter 11 and verse 1. Verses 22 and 23 of Matthew 2 tell us that Joseph, the father in Jesus' household, heard that Archelaus was reigning in the place of his father Herod. Jesus knew that Gabriel, who was the angel of the Lord in this case, had told him that he could go back when Herod was dead. Even so, like father, like son, Joseph was afraid to go to Judea, but according to the instruction of Gabriel, he was headed that way. The angel of the Lord, evidently Gabriel as we said, appeared to Joseph in a dream again and told him to alter his course and go into a certain part of Galilee. That part of Galilee turned out to be Nazareth. This was all by God's design, so that the words of the prophet that had said he would be called a Galilean would be fulfilled. In Matthew 2:23, Joseph came and dwelt in the city of Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet, he shall be called a Nazarene. Arguments have gone on among scholars as to what prophecy this was fulfilling. I have addressed that in the past, and it's not in the path of our course at the moment, so I will not get off onto it. The fact is that there was a prophecy out there somewhere that had this meaning. It was known, and by obeying the angel and going to Nazareth to bring up Jesus, Joseph and his party fulfilled it. And what about the ministry of Jesus? From whence would it arise? At what place would this light of the world burst on the scene? Again, the prophets had foretold the answer. In Isaiah chapter 9, verses 1 and 2, we read, Nevertheless, the dimness shall not be such as was in her vexation, when at the first he lightly afflicted the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, and afterward did more grievously afflict her by way of the sea, beyond Jordan, in Galilee of the nations. The people that had walked in darkness have seen a great light. They that dwell in the land of the shadow of death, upon them hath the light shined. The ministry of Christ would rise out of Galilee. But direct prophecy is not the only reason why Jesus began his ministry in Galilee after his baptism. In Genesis chapter 3, verses 14 and 15, the Orthodox interpretation of the promise was that the seed of the woman would provide deliverance for all of Eve's children. In the 3rd chapter of the New Testament book of Galatians, we are told, when God made the covenant of promise with Abraham in Genesis 12, verses 3 through 7, There are several important understandings about it. Number one, it was 430 years before there was ever a Jew or a nation of Israel. Number two, the covenant of the law at Sinai did not give the nation of Israel any inheritance in the covenant of promise. And number three, in the covenant of promise there are neither Jews nor Gentiles. The children of the promise, who are the church, the body of Christ, the pillar and ground of truth, which he purchased with his own blood, bone of his bones and flesh of his flesh. That body is comprised of any and all from all tribes and nations who come to God through Jesus Christ. The theme of time and history is not about the calling out of the nation of Israel and the establishment of that natural, mortal, sinful body comprised of Adam's children. The theme of time and history is about the redemption of the world through the coming and the work of Jesus the Christ. It's about the establishment of the church, the eternal body of Christ, who obtain eternal status in quantity and quality through new birth, by faith, and by grace. Well, the 3.5-year earthly ministry of Jesus was a necessary progression in bringing about the plan of redemption, and that 3.5 years was limited to Israel. Galilee is a part of Palestine. Even so, it is called by Isaiah Galilee of the nations. It was not part of Jewry. Jesus, the face of the eagle, the eternal God, began his ministry there to underscore the fact that the end result of his earthly ministry was not about the Jews, but about the human race and all who would come to God through him. Now, this is what John was trying to tell them when he said, the law came by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. When one understands the theme of time and history, it is fitting that Jesus should have shown himself and his power first in Galilee of the nations. Now, the Jews did not miss the significance of this. They indicted him on the accounts that he was from Nazareth and that he trafficked so much with non-Jews. There is yet another local and practical reason why Jesus preached and demonstrated the signs identifying him as the Messiah, first in Galilee and Samaria, before coming to Judea. But that comes out in the text better at a later time, so we'll forego it for now. In verse 51 we read, And he said unto him, Verily, verily, I say unto you, hereafter you shall see heaven open, and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. I promised to comment on Jesus as being the Son of Man and identifying himself as such, and I will do that now. The theology of Jesus being man is tied to the face of the man and the Gospel of Luke. It was the divine decision that in order to manifest God to us in his earthly ministry, he must be seen as king, servant, man, and God. We talked about that before, and we will talk about it again later. The use, by Jesus mostly, of the phrase the Son of Man is not specifically tied to the face of the man in the Gospel of Luke. Well, I'm not suggesting that there are not doctrinal considerations here. It's just that this particular one isn't one of them. As nearly as I can determine, the main reason for this term in the Bible is primarily as a way for Jesus to identify himself. John made it clear that he was the Son of God. Others, even the Roman centurion, confessed this truth. But Jesus was also the Son of Man. In his humility and desire not to put himself forward, which we observe in many biblical passages in the Gospels, Jesus preferred not to identify himself as the Son of God, but as the Son of Man. Well, when Pilate pressed him on the subject, Jesus admitted it, but by and large, he never used this title to identify himself. 32 times in Matthew, 15 times in Mark, 26 times in Luke, and 11 times in John, Jesus referred to himself as the Son of Man. But it was also a means of constantly reminding men that he was really a man. He was identified with men, and that God and man are the same in image and kind. Now in Acts 7:56, Stephen saw him standing at the right hand of God, and he was in the visage of the Son of Man. In Hebrews 2:6, men who are God's through faith are identified with Jesus, the Son of Man, who was made a little lower than the angels for the suffering of death for men, all of whom were under the condemnation and sentence of death. In Revelation chapter 1 and verse 13, John saw him at the right hand of the Father. Well, it was a symbolic vision in which many metaphorical things are revealed. Even so, John said that he looked like the Son of Man. I'll cite to you one passage that will perhaps help you understand a little better what I'm saying. It's in John chapter 12, verses 34 and 35, and they read this way. The people answered him, "We have heard out of the law that Christ abideth forever. And how sayest thou, the Son of Man must be lifted up? Who is this Son of Man?" Then Jesus said unto them, Yet a little while is the light with you. Walk while you have the light, lest the darkness come upon you. For he that walketh in darkness knoweth not whither he goeth. In this passage, Jesus tells them that he is the Son of Man, and that the Son of Man is the incarnate God, the light of the world sent down from heaven. But he does it in an indirect and diplomatic way, which is not self-promoting. Without any doubt, Jesus is trying to pull their minds away from the worldly way of thinking of God, of empire, and of greatness, and get them to see what God is really like. In the contrast between the titles, the Son of God and the Son of Man, Jesus was both, and both were legitimately his to use. But the humble servant prefers the Son of Man as the means of identifying himself. In verse 51 of John 1, Jesus is adding something to the lesson for Nathanael. He is saying, in effect, Nathanael, this lowly and unimportant son of Joseph in your eyes is indeed the Christ, who will do mighty things, and unto whom mighty things from heaven will be done on his behalf. But I will not change my visage, my station in life, or my title while all of this is going on. I will live and die as the man from Nazareth, the son of Joseph and Mary, the humble, disdained, rejected Son of Man. Now, I think that is enough on that subject for now. We will visit it from time to time, as it comes up often in our study of the Gospels. In chapter 4 of John, we come to the wedding feast of Cana. Well, we'll not have time to get very far on that today, and I will give it a good going over next time, and the next if necessary. But for the time that remains, I want to look at and lay a little groundwork for verses 3 through 5, and specifically verse 4. I read that. And when they wanted wine, the mother of Jesus said unto him, They have no wine. Jesus said unto her, Woman, what have I to do with thee? My hour is not yet come. His mother saith unto the servants, Whatsoever he saith unto you, do it. Without argument, this verse has caused consternation in the minds of Christian people through the 400 years of the English-speaking Christian church. The language here is convoluted. But it is possible to get the real meaning from the authorized version, and that's what I'm going to go through with you now. First of all, I want to establish the original meaning of the words in the phrase, Woman, what have I to do with thee? First is the word woman. It is the Greek word gune, and it means a woman, specifically a wife. It is not a formal term of indifference, just the opposite. It is a term of great endearment. Jesus saw his mother as a woman of great honor, privilege, and nobility in the faith. And so Jesus addresses her as dear, precious woman. The next word in the text is what. It is the Greek word tis, a so-called inclitoral indefinite pronoun. It's not really a question word, but a statement word. It means, among other things, anything whatsoever. Next is the phrase, have I. It is the Greek word emoi, and it means to me or of mine. Next is the word to do with. I say the word because in the Greek it's only one little word. It's kahi, and it means, among other things, for or yet. Finally, there's the word thee. In the Greek it is soi, and it means to the or for thee. The interlinear of the original Textus Receptus puts this verse in these words, Woman, what of thee and of me? For our word study, we come up with this wording, Dear lady, anything whatsoever of mine as of now for you. He follows by saying, My hour is not yet come. What is Jesus telling his mother? This is what he is saying. Dear, gracious, wonderful woman, whatever you want that is in my prerogative, I will do it for you. There will be a time, after my hour has come, I have died as a man after the flesh, and I am resurrected, when I will no longer be your son, and you will no longer be my mother. I will not be a man after the flesh any more. Then you will have no special privilege with me, but that time has not yet come. As of now, I am still your son, and you are still my mother. So whatever you want, if it's within me, that is, if it's not contradictory to my mission and purpose, I will do it for you. In other words, if she had said, Son, I do not want you to go to the cross and be tortured. I want you to get out of this territory and go hide somewhere until all of this blows over, he would not have been able to comply. But this was not that kind of request. It was something he could do. She knew it, and she knew that he knew it. Evidently, this is how she understood his answer, because of what follows. His mother saith unto the servants, Whatsoever he saith unto you, do it. This would have been a strange response if she had understood him to say, Woman, don't you realize I must be about my Father's business? What have I to do with you and your trifling little affairs? I have bigger fish to fry. Well, this is the interpretation that is most often given to his words. Impatiently and out of pity, he did what she asked. But that is not what he said, and it's not what she understood, as we have just pointed out. Remember, he had just told Nathanael that he was the Son of Man. As such, Mary was still his dear, greatly loved, highly respected, and dutifully obeyed mother who had sacrificed her entire life and reputation, so to speak, for his mission in this world. Next time, if the Lord wills, we will begin with verse 1 and take a close and thorough look at this passage.
Read more at godspointofview.com. A copy of this book is available from Amazon in Kindle and paperback format. Link in the description.